Mr. Vice President, thanks for taking my question. I'm Hannah Brandt from News Nation. As I'm sure you know, recent polling shows most Americans don't approve of how the Trump administration is handling the economy. I hear what you're saying, that it's going to take time to fix things, but the political reality is that the midterms are next year. Are you worried that affordability is a political liability for your administration and for Republicans?
Look, I'm not worried about the politics because I believe fundamentally in the wisdom of the American people. When we go out there and we tell our story, that gasoline and energy got way too high under Joe Biden's administration, but we've lowered the cost of energy, the American people will understand that. The American people know that. When we go out there and talk about the fact that the affordability crisis that happened under Joe Biden's administration made a lot of Americans poor and working every single day to put money back in their pocket, I think the American people will understand and agree with that. Of course, they're going to be the ones who make the final decision. But I feel very confident that if we keep wages high, we keep energy prices low, we keep on chipping away at the affordability crisis created by Joe Biden's administration, yes, I believe the American people are going to reward us because the American people are smart. They know Rome wasn't built in a day. They know what Joe Biden broke is not going to get fixed in a week. We got to stay with it. We got to keep on working on bringing good jobs and money back into the United States of America.
President Trump last week gave his economy a grade of A++++. What grade would you give the economy today?
A++++. Look,
After Donald Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, sent a wrecking ball of a PR cycle towards the White House in the form of this tell-all Vanity Fair interview, JD Vance took the stage and was asked about those very comments. Now remember, Susie Wiles said that Elon Musk was a ketamine-fueled drug addict. She said that Donald Trump has the personality of an alcoholic. Those are her words. And she also said that JD Vance has been a conspiracy theorist for about a decade. I want to show you his answer to that question, but let's just start with his answer to the affordability question that is rather incongruent with how Donald Trump speaks about affordability being a quote-unquote con job. JD Vance seems to have a bit of a different message that is also just BS. Take a look. Mr. Vice President, thanks for taking my question. I'm Hannah Brandt from News Nation. As I'm sure you know, recent polling shows most Americans don't approve of how the Trump administration is handling the economy. I hear what you're saying, that it's going to take time to fix things, but the political reality is that the midterms are next year. Are you worried that affordability is a political liability for your administration and for Republicans? By the way, I am trying to do my best to gather all the information I can for you and share it with you. Please leave your likes and comments, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. Let's continue. Look, I'm not worried about the politics because I believe fundamentally in the wisdom of the American people. When we go out there and we tell our story that gasoline and energy got way too high under Joe Biden's administration, but we've lowered the cost of energy, the American people will understand that. The American people know that when we go out there and talk about the fact that the affordability crisis that happened under Joe Biden's administration made a lot of Americans poor and were working every single day to put money back in their pocket, I think the American people will understand and agree with that. Of course, they're going to be the ones who make the final decision, but I feel very confident that if we keep wages high, we keep energy prices low, we keep on chipping away at the affordability crisis created by Joe Biden's administration, yes, I believe the American people are going to reward us because the American people are smart. They know Rome wasn't built in a day. They know what Joe Biden broke is not going to get fixed in a week. We got to stay with it. We got to keep on working on bringing good jobs and money back into the United States of America. Okay, this entire speech was contradictory to what he then says about 10 minutes later. He then says the economy is in an A+++ position. And what he says in that clip is that Rome wasn't built in a day, which is a concession that the economy is still not doing well. Here's the reality. Joe Biden had insane inflation halfway through his term. It was at about 9.2%, but inflation then came down as he was leaving office. During Joe Biden's last year, especially his last few months, inflation was at about 2.9%, about 3%. Donald Trump takes office, and rather than inflation dropping, like he said, rather than inflation going down to 2%, which is the resting rate, it has gone up because of his tariffs. So their lie that Joe Biden handed them a terrible economy is just that. It is a lie. Now, one of the main problems with the economy right now is that inflation is embedded in all of the prices. So back during 2022, when we had COVID-era supply shocks, when we had Ukraine supply shocks, all of these things coinciding at the same time, inflation smacked us, and now it is embedded in worldwide goods, consumer goods. There's no way to actually bring the prices down, as Donald Trump claimed. And his idea was to use tariffs to somehow, I don't even know, all it's done is made the economy way, way worse. And here is JD Vance contradicting himself. President Trump last week gave his economy a grade of A+++. What grade would you give the economy today? A+++. USA, USA, USA. It's literally just Schrodinger's economy. In one hand, they're cleaning up the mess that Biden left. It's a shitty economy because Biden left it. On the other hand, the economy is in an A+++ position when it's beneficial. It's absolutely absurd. And then everybody starts chanting USA like they're dogs frothing at the mouth. USA. Here's the simple fact of the matter. Again, you have to understand all of this stuff in context. What you have to ask yourself, what has the Trump economy been able to build over the past 10 or 11 months, given what we inherited from the Biden administration? Nothing. Manufacturing investment into the United States is down. The sole purpose of the tariffs was to increase manufacturing. It's down. Countries and companies are both investing less into the United States, despite Donald Trump's insane lies about raking in money. Unemployment is up for every American, but mainly young Americans. Speaking through the lens of a young American, unemployment is up like 10%. Unemployment with Black Americans is up. Unemployment among young and Black Americans being up is an early indicator of a weakening job market, and JD Vance is ignoring that. Here is JD Vance then being asked about the Vanity Fair interview, which was not too favorable to him or anyone. Let me just run through it really quickly. Wiles offered unreserved descriptions of top figures, including Trump, who she said has an alcoholic's personality. Wiles said Trump, quote, operates with a view that there's nothing he can't do, nothing, zero, nothing. She called Vice President JD Vance a conspiracy theorist for a decade, and White House Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vought, quote, a right-wing absolute zealot. So when JD Vance is asked about this, he goes on some moral superiority tirade. He's on his high horse saying that he's been proven right about everything over the past few years, so he can't possibly be a conspiracy theorist. Unfortunately, I have to ask a bit of an off-topic question from affordability because news events do intervene, and that is the interviews that White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles gave to Vanity Fair, in which she's quoted as referring to you as, excuse me, and again, not my words, sir, but a conspiracy theorist of a decade, and described your transformation from someone who once opposed President Trump to now his vice president as an act of political expediency. And I'd like to give you the chance to respond to that, sir. Well, first of all, if Susie, I'll trust what you said. I haven't looked at the article. I, of course, have heard about it. But conspiracy theorist? Sometimes I am a conspiracy theorist, but I only believe in the conspiracy theories that are true. And by the way, Susie and I have joked in private and in public about that for a long time. For example, I believed in the crazy conspiracy theory back in 2020 that it was stupid to mask 3-year-olds at the height of the COVID pandemic, that we should actually let them develop some language skills. Okay, wait. I'm going to pause it right here because he goes down a list of things that aren't really crazy conspiracy theories. They were actually valid policy debates. The problem is Donald Trump himself and JD Vance by proxy run conspiracy theories about the 2020 election being stolen, about COVID and where it actually came from, like were there nefarious forces trying to plant it, like Fauci. They run conspiracy theories about Democrats and their intentions with sedition. They run conspiracy theories about immigration and about Soros. Everything Trump says is a conspiracy. Then JD Vance takes actual legitimate policy debates. Like I remember back in 2020, Donald Trump was saying you should inject bleach, and he was saying crazy stuff about masks. The policy debate over whether 3-year-olds should realistically be masked was something that people were actually willing to entertain. No one's going to call you a conspiracy theorist or fascist for having a conversation about the necessity of masks for your 3-year-old. Let's continue. I believed in the conspiracy theory that the media and the government were covering up the fact that Joe Biden was clearly unable to do the job. If the media was covering it up, why were there more articles written about Biden's age than any other topic during the 2024 election? The New York Times wrote hundreds of articles. CNN hosted a debate where Joe Biden got exposed in front of the world. CNN hosted that debate. What kind of cover-up is that? And look at the Trump supporters in the crowd frothing at the mouth, screaming, "Open borders." And I believed in the conspiracy theory that Joe Biden was trying to throw his political opponents in jail rather than win an argument against his political opponent. This one really hurts me. This one is so gaslighty. Just remember, Donald Trump sent a DM to Pam Bondi, then accidentally posted it publicly. This DM said, "Please prosecute these 3 people." 2 out of those 3 people were then indicted immediately after. Don't let them gaslight you and think that Joe Biden was prosecuting anyone when Merrick Garland was like a puppy and Pam Bondi is like a pit bull going around indicting people over and over and over. At least on some of these conspiracy theories, it turns out that a conspiracy theory is just something that was true 6 months before the media admitted it. I don't know why I'm getting myself mad watching this clip of JD Vance clearly gaslighting with a pre-written script. He clearly had some time on the plane to come up with a rebuttal to this Vanity Fair article, and he used that time to come up with this BS about conspiracy theories, not very strong political instincts. Trump is way more charismatic on stage, and by charismatic I mean he's like a captivating train wreck on stage, yet Trump supporters like that more than whatever the hell this is. Let me add some additional analysis here because what we're witnessing is a masterclass in gaslighting and contradiction from JD Vance. And it's important to break down exactly what he's doing and why it's so insidious. First, on the economy, Vance is trying to have it both ways. He starts by acknowledging implicitly that the economy isn't great. He says Rome wasn't built in a day, that what Biden broke won't get fixed in a week, that they're working to chip away at the affordability crisis. That's an admission that things aren't good right now. But then literally 10 minutes later, he gives the economy an A+++ grade. So which is it? Are they cleaning up Biden's mess and it's going to take time? Or is the economy already at A+++ levels? You can't claim both simultaneously unless you're hoping your audience has the memory of a goldfish. And the facts completely contradict Vance's narrative about Biden leaving them a terrible economy. Biden did have high inflation in 2022, peaking around 9.1%. But by the time he left office, inflation had come down to about 2.9%, nearly at the Fed's target rate of 2%. Trump came in and immediately started imposing tariffs. And what happened? Inflation went back up. Not down like Trump promised, up, because tariffs are taxes on imports that get passed on to consumers. Every economist said this would happen. Trump did it anyway. And now we're seeing the predicted results. Manufacturing investment is down, despite tariffs supposedly being designed to boost manufacturing. Foreign companies are investing less in the U.S., not more. Unemployment is rising, particularly among young people and Black Americans, which are leading indicators of a weakening economy. Job creation has been anemic. Just 64,000 jobs added last month, about 110,000 total in the last 6 months. For comparison, Biden's worst month was 85,000 jobs. Trump is barely beating Biden's worst month while claiming the economy is at A+++ levels. The unemployment rate jumped to 4.6%. That's a significant increase that signals economic weakness. But Vance stands there saying everything is great while simultaneously saying they need time to fix Biden's mess. It's Schrodinger's economy, existing in 2 states at once, depending on which narrative is convenient at that moment. Now let's talk about the conspiracy theorist accusations. Susie Wiles, Trump's own chief of staff, called Vance a conspiracy theorist for a decade. And Vance's response is to list things that aren't actually conspiracy theories but were legitimate policy debates. Masking 3-year-olds? That was a real policy discussion that reasonable people disagreed about. Lots of experts and parents questioned whether very young children needed masks, especially given developmental concerns about language acquisition and social cues. That's not a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theory would be claiming masks are a government plot to control people, or that COVID was deliberately released to hurt Trump politically, or that vaccines contain microchips. Those are conspiracy theories. But Vance deliberately conflates reasonable policy disagreements with actual conspiracy theories to muddy the waters, because he knows Trump and he himself have promoted real conspiracy theories. The big lie about the 2020 election being stolen, claims about COVID being a Chinese bioweapon, QAnon-adjacent stuff about Democrats being pedophiles, great replacement theory rhetoric about immigration. When Vance says, "I only believe in conspiracy theories that are true," that's an admission that he does believe conspiracy theories, just ones he claims turned out to be accurate. But by that logic, they weren't conspiracy theories, they were suppressed truths. So which is it? Is he a conspiracy theorist or not? His example about media covering up Biden's cognitive decline is particularly dishonest. The media did extensive reporting on Biden's age and fitness. The New York Times published hundreds of articles about it. Cable news discussed it constantly. CNN literally hosted the debate where Biden's struggles became undeniable to everyone. That's not a cover-up. That's the media doing its job, sometimes to excess. A cover-up would be refusing to report on Biden's age or doctoring footage to hide his struggles. Instead, we got wall-to-wall coverage of every verbal stumble and moment of confusion. And Vance claiming Biden tried to throw political opponents in jail, that's pure projection. Merrick Garland was so cautious about investigating Trump that he waited nearly 2 years after January 6th to appoint a special counsel. He bent over backwards to avoid any appearance of political prosecution. Meanwhile, Trump literally posted publicly asking Pam Bondi to prosecute specific people. 2 of them were indicted shortly after. Trump has openly said he wants to prosecute political enemies. He's talked about weaponizing the Justice Department. Vance is accusing Biden of what Trump is actually doing. That's classic gaslighting. Accuse your opponents of your own behavior. When they push back, claim you're the real victim. Point to their legitimate investigations of your actual crimes as proof of political persecution. Then use that as justification to do what you falsely accuse them of doing. Vance's whole response to the Vanity Fair article was clearly scripted. He had time on the plane to workshop his response. And this is what he came up with: a pre-written bit about how he's technically a conspiracy theorist, but only for true things, followed by examples that aren't even conspiracy theories. It's not strong, it's not convincing, and it reveals that even Trump's team knows these accusations are damaging enough that they need prepared responses. If Vance was comfortable with being called a conspiracy theorist, he wouldn't need a scripted rebuttal. The USA chanting after Vance gives the economy an A+++ is particularly cringeworthy. Like trained seals responding to a stimulus. No critical thinking, no questioning the obvious contradiction with what he said 10 minutes earlier. Just mindless nationalism on cue. That's the level of discourse we're dealing with. Grade the economy? A+++. Everyone chant USA. Don't think about the rising unemployment or stagnant wages or increased costs or any actual economic indicators. Just cheer because your team is up there saying things. And Vance's comment about fundamentally believing in the wisdom of the American people is hilarious given that polling shows most Americans don't approve of how the administration is handling the economy. So either Americans are wise and he should listen to their disapproval, or Americans are wrong and he shouldn't care about their wisdom. He can't have it both ways. Well, he can try, and he is trying, but it's transparently nonsensical to anyone paying attention. The reality is that Trump and Vance made promises they can't keep about the economy. They said they'd bring down prices. Prices are still high, and in some cases going up because of tariffs. They said they'd boost manufacturing. Manufacturing investment is down. They said they'd create jobs. Job creation is terrible. So now they're stuck trying to blame Biden, while simultaneously claiming everything is great. trying to say they need time to fix problems while grading themselves A+++, trying to have every rhetorical position at once depending on the question and the moment. It's not working. People can see their grocery bills and their healthcare premiums and their electricity costs. They know if they have jobs or if they're struggling to find work. They can see through the obvious contradictions, even if they can't always articulate exactly what's wrong with what Vance is saying. Subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of analysis, cutting through the BS and calling out the gaslighting. Because it's only going to get worse as we get closer to 2026 midterms and they get more desperate to defend an indefensible record.